Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Brennan, and I'm an associate professor in environmental engineering at Penn State. And I was asked to come speak to you about the Penn State Drawdown initiative. So before I get started, I just wanted to thank the symposium organizers, and hats off to you for creating such a diverse symposium and enabling us to do it over a series of days in this format. It's really inspiring to see so many individuals from different colleges coming together to talk about sustainability, because that's what we really need to push these things forward. So because I am recording this remotely in advance, I thought I would go ahead and give you a little bit of background about myself so that if you want to reach out to contact me about this initiative in the future, you know a little bit more about me and how to reach me. So I am currently the director of the Penn State Drawdown Scholars Program, which is a research experiences for undergraduates program that we run in the summers at Penn State. The co-director is Dr. Cindy Reed out of the College of Engineering, and she's been fantastic at facilitating this program year after year. So we really couldn't do this without her. I'm also currently the director of the Penn State Water Energy Food Nexus Initiative, which you'll see in a moment is very related to the Drawdown Initiative. There's many interlinkages there. And I'm the chair of the College of Engineering Sustainability Council. So a lot of our sustainability councils are working together on these programs. So if you have questions about those initiatives, you can also reach out to me. So before we start talking about drawdown, I just want to frame it in the context of the UN SDGs. And I realize if you're watching this video, you're probably aware of these, right? But I want to look at it in terms of what our students see, or if they're even aware that this exists. So when I poll my freshmen, I teach some first year seminars in my college, specifically on drawdown, and I ask them, I do a little poll in Zoom, how many of you have even heard of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? And the majority, time after time, have not. And so I tell them, well, hopefully by the time you graduate from college, all of our students will be aware of the UN SDGs. And then we talk about, well, what do these actually mean? Some of them hopefully know about the United Nations, but they don't understand what these 17 goals are for the year 2030. And a lot of people, even if they do know about the SDGs, they think that this is it. These are the 17 goals written here with these little icons. And somehow we're supposed to go out into the world and make these happen. But what people don't realize is that there's hundreds of pages of documentation of objectives and metrics to help us meet these goals in another 10 years. All right. But even so, it's difficult depending on your discipline to see how you fit in with this. Like I ask our engineering faculty, how many of you are teaching these in your classrooms? And, depending on the field, they might say, oh, yeah, well, we're doing energy. That's really common in the College of Engineering. We're working on renewable energy. We're working on infrastructure. And some of us are working on clean water and sanitation, so they can see how they fit into a couple. And that's generally true across the university. But how do we equip our students to be able to feel like they are empowered to contribute in many of these areas and to see that their profession has impacts perhaps in all of the SDGs if we really look at it from a systems level perspective? So depending on the profession, and this is what I advocate for in the Sustainability Council, is that depending on your profession, you may have different ways of trying to meet sustainability. So this is what we have in engineering. We have our Accreditation Board of Engineering and Technology that certifies that the students coming out of an accredited program have met a minimum level of criteria for professional practice. This is what is needed in the world today. This is what our students are going to have to be able to do when they graduate and go out into the workforce. And recently, for engineering, we have revised these student outcomes. You see the date here. These only became effective in the 2019-2020 academic year. We have revised these to encompass sustainability. And although it doesn't use the word sustainability, it includes all of the important components. So in addition to being able to solve complex engineering problems, which you would expect, we are now requiring that our students are designing with consideration for public health, safety, and welfare, which we've done, but now to also consider global, cultural, social, environmental, and economic factors in their designs. So when these were first released, I was super happy, but a lot of faculty were like, how do we do all of that? Unless you're doing very applied work that's addressing the needs of people in the world today, if you're just teaching from a textbook, it's very difficult to meet that. We have to be teaching to our applied world, right? It's more like humanitarian engineering to look at the greater impact of your designs on our social systems and the world. So it's clearly important to the UN, right? Sustainability. It's clearly important to our profession. And I challenge you, if you're not in engineering, to find what your profession says about sustainability. But then also Penn State has totally embraced this. So I took these words straight out of Penn State's strategic plan, and it's recognized as one of our foundations and as one of our thematic priorities. So right there, our foundation of ensuring a sustainable future says that Penn State, our faculty, staff, and students are going to confront assertively climate change and sustainability. And that under our thematic priority of stewarding our planet's resources, we will be a leader, not just do it. We're going to be a leader in creating comprehensive solutions to mitigate climate change and to address the challenges of providing water, energy, and food for everyone. So that's our water, energy, food nexus initiative encapsulated right there in our strategic plan. So clearly it's important across the spectrum, right? To the UN, to our profession, to our university. And if we would try to somehow put these in words as a mission statement, I would phrase it this way. This is my personal mission. And I tried to put this all together, is to provide access to fundamental human rights of water, energy, and food, while maximizing our social and ecological benefits and also reversing global warming. So that's a huge task, right? You could spend your whole career, lifetimes trying to do this, right? But the question again is how? How do we do this? Where do we start? It's difficult to find a guidebook, a roadmap. How do we make this happen? So this, I think, is one of the most optimistic paths forward that's been presented to address these challenges. And this is Drawdown. So this is a cover of the book, and I have it here, but with my virtual background, it might be hard for you to see. Yeah, there it is. There's the book. It's fantastic. It's relatively inexpensive. You can order it off of Amazon. I think it's like $17 now for the paper copy, but you can get a Kindle version or electronic version for under $5, I believe. So this was a New York Times bestseller in 2017. And you would think, how did we get a New York Times bestseller on climate change in 2017? It's because it was not written with gloom and doom. And, here's the science of climate change, and we're going to all, have fires and hurricanes and everything that we're having. It doesn't really talk about that as much as it says, sure, this is a given. We're in this situation, but look at all of our ingenuity. Look at the technologies and social and ecological strategies that we can employ to solve this problem. We have them. They're here. And so what they've done is actually modeled these different strategies to see how they can reverse climate change. So drawdown, that word drawdown is referring to the point at which carbon emissions are actually decreasing. So we all know, the famous curve with the carbon dioxide's equivalent emissions continuing to rise and rise and rise. We all agree we need to stop that. We need to flatten that curve. But we're already in this state of our planet. To restore ecological balance, we not just have to flatten the curve, we actually have to reverse it. And that's the concept behind drawdown. It's the point at which these greenhouse gases are reversed and ultimately reverse global warming itself. So the scientists and engineers that are working with Project Drawdown have looked at these different technical, ecological, and social strategies. They're organized into these 9 sectors that you see here. So broadly, one group of sectors is on reducing the sources of these emissions. So for example, the way we design our buildings, how we produce our electricity, how we produce our food, our industry and transportation sectors, those are classified under reducing sources. Then there's sinks. How can we sequester carbon in coastal and ocean ecosystems? Engineered sinks with materials, land sinks, etc. And then there's a very important and often overlooked component of social equality with health and education, which you'll see is just as important, if not more, than many of these other strategies. So I'd like you to look at um, the website for Drawdown. I mean, the book is what readily accessible, but there's also this website, and I provided the link there so you could take a look at it. And what you'll see is that the scientists and engineers have modeled the implementation of these strategies to the year 2050 to see how much equivalent carbon dioxide we can reduce from the atmosphere, how much it will cost to do that, and what will be our net savings in the long term. So the analogy I like to draw is with purchasing like an LED light bulb, right? You know that's expensive, but you buy it anyway because maybe you're environmentally conscious, but you could also be economically minded and say, this costs more upfront, but I know it's going to save me energy, and therefore my total cost for electricity is going to drop over time if I look at it in the long term. And that's basically what they've done with these different strategies. And then they've ranked them on a global scale. So what are the highest priority technologies that we should really employ today? However, each community's approach to embracing drawdown technologies will be different depending on their individual needs. All right. So usually when I teach this to my students, I thought you might like to see how I introduce this drawdown concept is I actually, break them out into groups, and you can do this obviously easily in Zoom enough now, right? Breakout groups. And I have them go to the drawdown website and actually look at the solutions and discuss what they think the top 10 are, because many of them they may not have heard of before. And so getting them to talk about it, what does that mean? What is this? Well, what is really the priority here? How many people does this strategy actually have the potential to affect? That really gets the conversation flowing. All right, so I'm going to actually show you this website right now. If you'll bear with me here. So I'm going to change the screen share so we can take a look at the website. All right, so if you go to Drawdown Solutions, you'll see this page here. And if you scroll down, you'll see all the solutions listed in these blocks, right? And it's a little bit overwhelming. There's a lot, okay? But if you go up at the top here, you'll see they've divided them into those sectors: sources, sinks, and society. So what I advise my students to do is I say, rather than looking at all of them at once, pick one sector at a time. So like pick electricity, and the website modifies the blocks to show you all the ones that apply to electricity. And then you can look at these and say, well, out of all of these, which has the greatest potential to reduce climate change? And so then you can look and like, oh, there's nuclear power, geothermal, biomass, solar photovoltaics. What are we going to do? What is really that has the greatest potential? And then you can go through and look at food, agriculture, and land use and industry. And it's really fun to use this. And as you click on each one, you can go in and read more about it. After they do this activity of looking online and talking about the different strategies that Drawdown has proposed, then I go through what the top 10 actually are. And we actually discuss what they thought, and we look at common misconceptions. And this is a great opportunity to dispel, environmental folklore. So for example, we'll often get in the top 10 bioplastics, that bioplastics are somehow going to save mankind from global warming. And while plastic pollution is a humongous problem, right? And working on bioplastics is indeed admirable and something we should be focusing on, it doesn't contribute that much to global warming. So, but why? Why are the students fixated on that? And if we look at it, it's really about what is in the popular press right now. What are they seeing on social media? They're seeing celebrities proposing to, don't use single-use plastics, don't use straws, don't use, plastic disposable water bottles. So they see it and they're exposed to it. So then that brings up really important discussions about science communication. And so it's a great segue into a lot of the issues that surround us today when we're trying to achieve sustainability and promote accurate information in the public eye, right? So then we talk about, well, what are the top 10? So I'll go through the top 10 with you right now. So the top one is refrigeration. And this one often throws people off. But when they talk about refrigeration, we're not just talking about cooling of food. We're also talking about cooling of indoor spaces, which is becoming increasingly important as temperatures rise and as communities become more affluent around the world to be able to maintain productivity under all sorts of environmental conditions. And so obviously the refrigerants that are used in cooling these spaces and our food supplies are critically important, because if we're using the wrong ones and they leak into the atmosphere, we can cause a lot of problems, right? So refrigeration is actually number one. Then we start seeing a lot of technologies for renewable energy production. So wind is right up there. Then you see things like reducing food waste and converting to a plant-rich diet. Starting that conversation is really valuable. Reducing food waste, I think most people are on board with now. Penn State has an excellent food waste collection process and composting facility, but we don't talk as much about a plant-rich diet because unfortunately that hits home to too many people. That's like a personal, private choice, what you eat. It's really difficult to convince people, you might want to lay off the steak a little bit there. But if you approach it in more of a manner like, oh, well, maybe instead of having a hamburger, you can have a turkey sandwich and you can, reduce your emissions considerably, and showing them the science behind that and talking about what goes into meat production. Animal proteins have a big environmental footprint. So this is a great opportunity to bring up these topics with your students. Um, then we also have ecological approaches in the top 10, like tropical forests. We also see social strategies, education of girls, making sure that girls all around the world have the same access to quality education as their male counterparts, which is separate from family planning. Often people will confuse the two and think that educating girls just means, teaching them how to use contraception, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about giving them the same access to quality education as men. And the fact that, women leaders around the world tend to use their resources for their countries more effectively. They tend to push their resources into education. They're more peaceful. They have greater sustainability objectives. And how do you get those women leaders? It starts with education. So that starts that conversation as well with your students. Again, we see renewable energy, more ecological solutions, and more renewable energy. So these are the top 10 from a global perspective. But again, remind your students that this changes depending on the individual community, where they're located in the world, how big they are, what are their resources nearby, etc. So, but from a global perspective, it's nice to look at it overall. I also like to show it in terms of the total atmospheric carbon dioxide equivalents reduced that we could have by 2050 if we invest in these top 10. And you can see that, they're, while, 1 and 2, they have that ranking, they're still very significant in their contributions across the board. Also, the sectors are very diverse. And I said that as I was going through the top 10, that we have technical, ecological, and social solutions. So the education of girls is just as important as renewable energy. And this cannot be understated. All right, but that's the top 10. If you look at all of the drawdown strategies, and their total impact when applied on a global scale, you see something like this pie chart here. And you see that the top 10 take over half the pie, okay? But that they're all contributing factors. There isn't a drawdown strategy that isn't helpful, right? But there's something about the pie approach that I find a little bit, I guess, misleading in a way, because it makes it look as if each piece of the pie is an individual slice that you can take out. But in reality, they affect each other. If you improve sustainability in one sector, the chances are you're going to also improve sustainability in other sectors, because we're living in a system, right? Our strategies affect one another. So I prefer more of like an overlapping Venn diagram approach. And so this is one that I threw together, where it's showing that our water, energy, food, our land use, industry, buildings, they're all interconnected. They all affect each other. And importantly, this all exists within a societal framework, right? If we don't have governance, if our law and policy, if our political officials are not on board, none of this can happen, right? We have to have buy-in. We have to be working together to achieve sustainability. So with the Drawdown program, we're really trying not just to talk about these strategies, but actually to implement them, and to do this in collaboration with those governments, with our communities that are being affected, with our industry. Industry can have huge impacts depending on their approaches, right? So this is our path forward. And this research to action really embodies the approach that Penn State is taking with respect to Drawdown. So I'd like to share with you another website, but this time it's going to be a video. It's only a couple minutes long, but it's a video made about our new research experiences for undergraduates program. And then we'll go on and talk about that in a little bit more detail if you'd like to become involved. So I'm going to stop sharing my video and go back to the website. Actually, let me do one more thing to ensure that you have good audio quality. I have to click a few more buttons. Bear with me there. Okay, here we go. Okay, so now you should see that. So this is a nice little video put together for Penn State.
But we're here today to focus our attention on the greatest challenge of our era, right, which is climate change.
The idea of Drawdown to me, more than anything else, is the story of hope. We hear quite a bit about all the environmental disasters and challenges that we have because of global warming. Drawdown is not about fretting the problem, it's about solving the problem.
What Project Drawdown does is provides us with direct, hands-on, palatable solutions that everyone can contribute to.
If you're a consumer or a business or a government, you've got choices to make and you're not sure which ones will be the best bang for the buck in terms of their climate benefits, this is a way to get a first order assessment of what that benefit might be.
Bringing together Project Drawdown and Penn State makes tremendous sense. The goal of the College of Engineering is to always be at the forefront of having impact on society. For us to have an impact on what is the single biggest challenge facing humans today, it's perfectly natural to see that the Drawdown goal and our goals are aligned. We have faculty who are experts in just about every one of the Drawdown solutions. And we have the infrastructure and resources to organize big programs that can help meet students from Penn State and from around the country with the Drawdown personnel and really advance together.
One of Penn State's strategic goals is stewardship of our planet's resources. And within that goal, we specify finding solutions to combat climate change and providing access to food, energy, and water for everyone in the world. Project Drawdown provides us the solutions to meet those strategic goals. Within my research group, we focus on resource recovery from waste streams and conversion of those resources into food and energy. So both of my Drawdown scholars are not engineers. One has a focus in health, one has a focus in law, and that to me is perfect because they can teach me about those topics while I teach them about the engineering solutions, and together we can come up with a new way of approaching these problems.
We believe next year's program will be bigger and stronger, and we'd like this to become not just an annual program, but a program through which every class of students becomes connected to the next class. Our aim is to equip these students with exclusive leadership training so they can build capacity and Drawdown solutions around the world.
And what's really exciting is these are things which, when we do them, and we will, they're going to make the world a better place. It's not like we're giving something up. It's like we're actually making the world that we want to live in.
My hope for the future of the Penn State RU Drawdown program is that it becomes the go-to place for students around the country to come work on sustainable solutions for this century. All right, so hopefully that was interesting for you there. So I'll go back to sharing the slides. Okay, so that's how we started with our Drawdown Research Experiences for Undergraduates program. So let's talk about it just a little bit more so you can see exactly what we're up to. So this is an 8-week research program, and It may expand to 10 weeks in the future because it's really hard to do everything that we need to do in just 8 weeks. But in addition to working directly with faculty and their research teams, we also have weekly professional development programs for the students. So we think that it is imperative that they have excellent science communication skills and cultural sensitivity to be able to go out and become these informed agents of change once they graduate from the program. So we focus on technical writing, we talk about public speaking, professional networking. We try to encourage them to go to graduate school, especially to pick Penn State. And we have a variety of mentors, not just in the College of Engineering, but from across the entire campus. We're recruiting students from not just Penn State, but from institutions around the country. We're looking for the best students to come here and work with us. So we've had support from a variety of different colleges and institutes that we're very grateful for, and we hope that continues. We're also looking for other sources of funding, donations, federal funding, et cetera, would be extraordinary to keep this program alive. So in 2019 was our first time we piloted the program. And then in 2020, because of COVID, we had to run the program virtually. But it was a great experience because we proved that we could do it, even under these conditions. We were still able to match excellent undergraduate students with really dedicated faculty and work on these problems together. We had a lot of interactive Zoom meetings and workshops. And the students were very dedicated and said that they wanted even more. They wanted more Zoom, which was really interesting. So this experience also informs us for how we can continue to teach these kinds of programs virtually in a global system. We were looking at just having our US students involved, but what about using this with global programs, with study abroad courses? We can bring students into Penn State, no matter where they are in the world, to work on these global climate change strategies. So in addition to our Drawdown program, which we're planning to continue in 2021, we also held our first International Drawdown Conference back in 2019. Maybe you had the opportunity to attend, and we're hoping that we are able to continue these kinds of conferences in the future. They may not always be at Penn State, they may be hosted other places, but the Drawdown Initiative is building worldwide and bringing like-minded people together to brainstorm on how to expand these programs, how to really reach out to communities, how to implement these strategies on a broad scale. That's what this is all about. So if you're interested in learning more, you can go to this website that's shown there at the top. This highlights the Drawdown Scholars projects from 2020. And also it highlights some of the projects that were done by the Climate Science REU program that was actually running at the same time in parallel with the Drawdown Scholars program. And we actually met together as a larger group for several occasions to learn about climate change, to learn about strategies for reversing global warming. We did this together as a group. So it was really fantastic to bring all of these different people together because we need scientists to, of course, study the problem and help explain it to the world. But we also need people that are, implementing the strategies directly across a variety of sectors, right? Technical, ecological, and social. So if you're interested in participating, whether as a faculty mentor or as a student, or maybe you're working in an industry or local government that would like to have us focus on your issue to bring more sustainability to your programs, please reach out and contact us. The application for the Drawdown Scholars Program will open in the spring semester, and here's the link to it. But you can also learn more about the program in general at this website. And if you're interested in participating as a faculty mentor or as bringing a community issue forward, you can feel free to reach out to me, and we'll try to match you up with an appropriate faculty team. So I hope that was super helpful to you. Thank you so much for the invitation to present. And again, feel free to reach out to me at any time. Thank you so much.